Maybe.
Good Lord. What's going on in here when we're not in here?
I don't know.
Oh, shit.
Well, I kind of do know, but...
Yeah, no shit. Well, hopefully that sounds all right. I don't know. I turned my gain up, but maybe a little too high.
That's what I was thinking, the gain.
Yep. We're going to have to dial that in, or something's going to have to change around here. I don't like that at all.
Like a good gain in my mic.
Yep, got to have a good gain. What are you going to do? Anyways, welcome to the show, everybody. It is the Detroit Cast with Mike and Jay. Shalom, Big E. Jay's not here. We were supposed to not... Any of us weren't supposed to be here today. We had scheduled a day off, and because a couple of us had some shit going on. But then I got information that the Bob Probert movie, Tough Guy, the Bob Probert story, the director was going to be available. Director, writer, producer, really took the whole project on, and he was flying into town. I don't know if he's LA based or what. I think he is, but he was flying into town because it premieres tonight and this weekend. Blah blah blah. And it was like, you can have him in studio. And I was like, yeah, okay, Ian, I'll be here. We'll
Totally.
just do it. Yeah,
you
we'll
don't turn that down. If you can, you don't turn shit like that down.
So he's going to be here probably, he could be here anytime between now and the next half hour. I figured, maybe we could just kill a couple, half hour or so before he gets here. And then we'll bring him in. You saw the movie. I've seen the movie.
Yeah.
It's great. We'll dive into it all with him later. What
Another tearjerker for me, by the way. Christ.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
Well, you can tell him that. That's
Okay.
good. He'll want to hear that
Yeah.
because trying to humanize someone with that many problems is sometimes tough. And I think he did a
Totally.
really good job. And fans of it's another one. You don't really need to be a fan of hockey. It's a story. So
No.
we'll get into all that with him, and looking forward to that. What a fucking day yesterday, though, man. How cool was that?
Awesome.
Oh my God.
That's awesome.
So we did our show, and then Grind Time was coming that evening, last night, and so Mac and the boys were coming over, and to do their show, and things went off well for them. But between our shows, Vinnie Dombroski, lead singer of Sponge, the Orbitsons, Crud, all that. You guys all know Vinnie, legend around here. I've been begging this guy to do something forever. He's really hard. He's great. He's the sweetest guy ever. I love him to death. And I'm like, Vin, we got to do something. We got to do something together. And so we've kind of been kicking the ball around a little bit, throwing the ball around the horn on some ideas, and came up with something. And so it was like, hey, Vin, we've never we've done interview settings before where I've just interviewed you and stuff, but
Never sat down in a...
Yeah, just kind of get the feel of dynamic of things in a room together. And so he's got an idea of some things he wants to do. And so Vinny came over yesterday and brought his guitar, and we did a practice show. We filmed it, and we recorded it. And Travis Bully came over and kind of engineered it with E, the two of them over there.
Yeah, that was great, by the way.
It was really cool to have you guys there. And Vin and I just sat down and kicked out the very first, practice episode. I don't know what we'll do with it. Of what are we calling it?
Whiskey for my lunch?
Yeah, whiskey.
No.
Whiskey for my.
Sorry.
Shit. What is it called? E. What?
Not for my dinner or no? It's
no. It's
whiskey.
See if you can see it anywhere over there, upstairs on one of my notes or something.
I'm gonna go look and try to see if you
got
it somewhere.
it doesn't matter. I mean, we just Vin thought of it on the way over, and it was it's kind of a play on whiskey or on maybe it is whiskey for my no. Well, whatever. The term about it's kind of basically busking out on the open road. You just sit down somewhere with an open guitar case, and busking for your lunch is the term where you'd sit down and just play your guitar and hope people throw some change, dollar bills in your suitcase.
Oh, I'm way too winded considering I just ran up and down your stairs
Yeah.
once. But singing
For my whiskey.
Singing for my whiskey.
Jesus Christ! I went,
I
Vin,
know.
that's a beautiful. I love it, and because singing for my lunch, like I was saying, is a busk term. And guys, I remember talking to Steve Poltz one day. We were up at the Franklin Grill. He was in town, and we're having lunch, and he was talking about how when he was in San Diego, he was in bands. He was going to, I think he went to San Diego State University, and he's in the rug burns, and he really wanted to figure out if he could do this on his own. And can you imagine, dude? He's like, I had nothing. I had my guitar and my suitcase, and I just flew to London.
Yeah.
And I just sat down on the fucking street, threw open my guitar case, and just started playing. And I wanted to know if, with nothing in my pocket, I could feed myself and find myself a place to lay my head at night.
Yeah.
And find out if I was good enough. And
So jealous of that, dude.
I know. And he's like, I went all over the fucking world. I never went without food. I never went without a place to sleep. And I had the best time, and I learned everything I needed to learn. And he got all these experiences around the globe. And it's so cool that people can do. I just have so much respect for the balls it takes to do that kind of thing, you know?
I do.
And I think of Vinny as kind of one of those guys. And so, anyway, dude, we sat down and, you know, he's telling stories, and I didn't know what we were going to do. You know, I was like, you know, I'm just going to have to feel him out because I don't want to impose. I really wanted him
to be able to tell his stories his way. Yeah. You're kind of just trying to lead him places, maybe get him back if he needs to. But.
And I was very clear with Vin. I was like, look, dude, I can be in the background. I can be not in the room. I can just man the board for you. I've got guys that can help out. E will help out. We can get other guys here. You can bring a co-host in with you. Whatever you want to do, I'll do. And he was like, well, I don't want to impose, but, you know, you're good at doing that stuff. I mean, I'd love it if you do it with me. And I was like, I'd be honored, but I don't want to.
Right.
I don't want to go somewhere where, you know, I don't want to be overly involved in something that's yours and blah blah blah. So, anyways,
if they don't want you to, that's the thing. You want him to have it be his vision.
Yes.
You'll help him, but you want it to be his thing. And that's for artists. That's harder than people realize. Like a lot of people. We talked to Mike Reese. I know that's a small weird thing, but when he talks about TV shows and why Netflix shows do good, and it's because there's no these network executives. Just like that's the reason they do good. They sell a show. They say yes, we like this idea. Go make 10 episodes. Boom, out. And so it's just hard when people are trying to make art. So many people want to put their freaking stamp on it, or they want their joke in there, or their voice.
Yeah.
So for him to have someone like you that he trusts, though, that he can do that with, that's what the key is.
Well,
to me anyway.
I thought my pitch to everybody I've talked to, whether it's J. Chris Newberg, Steve Poltz, Vinnie Dombroski, D-Mac, all of them, you know, I've had multiple meetings with them, and some work out, some may not. You know, I've been working Poltz for a while now.
God,
and
he'd be good.
Oh my God, would he be fucking wonderful?
I
And I sent him a microphone. Just start recording shit, man. Just send it to me. Let me see what you got. And J. Chris Newberg. But I tell every one of them, and they're all shocked because they're all in that field. They're in the entertainment business. They know what it's like to deal with A&R guys and management and record labels and, you know, their own agencies and stuff like that. Like it becomes a tangled mess, and if you're not careful, they can turn you into something that you're not.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, my pitch to them is, look, guys, I get it because I do content, and I don't want anybody telling me ever what the fuck I can or can't do. So if you do something with us, it's yours to do whatever you want. I'll help you any way you want. I'll be there for you, but I'm not going to tell you what you can and can't do. And Steve Poltz is just like, well, what do you mean?
But what if I said this?
I can do anything? I'm like, anything you want, Steve. And he's like, but what do you mean I can do anything? I'm like, Steve, if you want to sit down one day and make an artistic statement and air white noise for an hour, air white noise for an hour. It's your show. And he's like, no way. No way. And all of them are like kind of looking at me sideways.
Right.
Like, really? And it's like, yeah, man, I want to get cool people involved that can express themselves however they want. And I know their talent is through the roof. I know these guys personally, and I know you know what you think you know stuff about them, but you really don't. That you know what they've shown you, and to see these guys like unmask a little bit and tell stories. I'm learning so much about J. Chris Newberg that I didn't even know, and I've known him for 20 fucking plus years.
Well, as artists, I think,
and Vin too.
The thing with artists is, you know, a lot of them or us, whatever you consider what we do, is you're usually there is a thing of like, you know, worry, self-hate, maybe not sure if you're good enough, never sure if you're good enough. So the point is like you know what you kind of want out of maybe whatever building here, a platform or whatever you want, and you know what you want. So you're handpicking who you want. And so you already know that you're okay with whatever they do, but they're still just so not used to someone saying that. They don't realize the faith you already have in them because you won't even go to them.
I know.
You won't even give them the mic if you already were okay with, dude, whatever you do is good.
People would be blown the fuck away if they saw the texts and behind the scenes conversations with some of these guys who are truly like amazing dudes.
Dude.
Amazing personalities, amazing people with killer stories from all parts of the world. And most of them are like, I don't want to fuck up what you got going over there. Like and I'm like, hey Vin, J. Chris Newberg, don't worry about that.
Right.
Like seriously, I don't want to fuck up what you
you're
were
doing.
doing. Don't worry about me.
Right.
I came to you. If this is fucked up, that's on me. And so Vinny came down here, and dude, I don't know about you, E, but I had the best fucking time, man.
It was a pleasure. It was an honor to even just be able to sit there and be a part of the beginning of it.
Well, we were talking about it. It was like, some guys don't want to, like, and Vin and I had this kind of conversation on the show yesterday, where it's like, some guys that are writers, it's poetry. It's personal to them, and if you go, what was that song about?
I totally
that you
agree with
wrote?
you on this, by the way. Your opinion on this.
Yeah,
You're about to say it, but
I don't know which part you're thinking, but it's like you go up to a songwriter and you go, what did you mean when you wrote that? And they're like, hey man, whatever you got out of it is what you got out of it. That's what I meant.
No, you wrote that about something. There was a content there.
Yes, and that's what I said. I was like, no, motherfucker, you wrote it. You tell me what you were thinking.
It doesn't matter if it was like, dude, maybe you got the weirdest inspiration of just looking at some blinds, and then those blinds led into a story about cocaine. But it came from somewhere.
Sure,
so
sure.
good.
And it's just so funny because it's these guys' lives. It's just part of that thing, And so to everyday Joes like us, I don't talk to fucking Jerry Cantrell from Alice in Chains. You know what I mean? Like, Jerry Cantrell is never going to call me and go, hey, bro, we're coming to town. Can we stay at your house? Like, that's never going to happen for me. But it does for someone like Vinnie Dombroski.
Yeah.
And so hearing that, and not in a braggadocious way, just in a nonchalant, this is, okay, this leads to this part of the next story. And the stories were going on, and they were just amazing. And so Vinny's not one of those guys, though, that's like, hey, whatever you were thinking is what that song lyric meant. He's cool with me going, hold on, man. Back up a second. Back up. I want to know more about that exact thing you were writing here.
Did you really bust in that door and, that song?
You're writing about this song. Is that a personal thing that happened?
Yeah.
Fuck yeah, it was. and then it's like, do you mind playing a little bit of it? And what I loved was Vinny had the perfect amount of play. Like, he would go, yeah, he's got a guitar in his lap, and he'd just start playing it, and that very ultra-familiar, unique Vinnie Dombroski voice comes blasting through, and it's like, I'm just like, is this really happening right now? Yeah. And he would play, like, enough of it so that you totally understood.
You're dead on.
And got the point, but not like, I need my 5.5 minutes on stage right now.
Yeah, going into a
play the
solo
whole song
or something.
Yeah, no. It was just like, here's what it is, and then you'd go on to something else. It was so.
Here's
fun.
kind of the cliff notes of the song, like what you need to know. But
yeah, and so Singing for My Whiskey is going to be the name of the show. Singing for My Whiskey with Vinnie Dombroski, and Vin is really, really, really into. He's really gotten some unique hobbies. Like, he loves craft beer and really cool, like, some out there whiskeys.
Right.
And he's got a buddy I know that has a store that just does, and I wish I remembered the name he told me, because I'd give him a plug right now, but Garden and something, and like distillery, with aged whiskeys. And so he wants to bring this guy in and go through the whole process and sip whiskey.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we should fucking have people. We should sell seats to have people come in and hang with us.
Absolutely.
And he's like, fuck yeah, man. Because there's something really fucking cool, and I want more people to experience it, to see guys at that level sitting down with a guitar and just, when he does an Orbison song, it's something he's written there, E just fucking lights up. I look over at E more than Vin, because you love that.
I can't get
country
over it.
Style.
I feel like, and it's like, I don't want to just, I know the joke about me being drunk and I'd suck his dick.
Yeah.
But it's like, so I don't want to like be like that. But you've offered music to me at times, and I'm easy. I will tell people, I didn't care for it. I'll try anything that people throw at me, but I have no problem telling someone, didn't care for it. But dude, his country shit, my fucking God, dude. I was listening to it on the way in today.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you were listening to Orbison's. Yeah. You sent me
on the way in.
Screenshot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, holy fuck, man! I'd listen to this shit.
Yeah. I love getting introduced to things that I'm not familiar with. Like, listeners are doing this a lot. They'll send me, like, hey man, I heard you talking about this, and if you like that, you should check out X.
Right.
And sometimes I dig it, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I listen to it, sometimes I don't. But I try. And Jim Fox sent me something. He was like, hey, man. And he sends me a lot of shit. He can annoy the fuck out of me at times. He'll send me so much shit.
Yeah.
I love the guy to death.
He's awesome, but you're right. He can be a bit much at times.
Well, he's out in Colorado, so he's not anywhere near us. So it's not like he can, pop by and, hey, man, I brought you this disc. He's great. And he's always been very, very supportive of us. And he'll send me some really unique stuff. I mean, it was a listener that sent us the very first time we heard Mike Massey.
Absolutely.
The Mike Massey thing doesn't happen if a listener doesn't hear me just butchering Africa one day on the air, mockingly, and said, "Oh, you want a real version? Here, check this out." And it was like, "Oh, shit!" we got Massey on the phone. Next thing you know, we're flying him into town, and he's performing. And so Fox sends me this thing. He's like, "Hey, man, you might like these guys, this band, Mixed Up Everything." And I'm like, "Okay, I'm not familiar." It turns out they're in Australia, and they're like 4 brothers. And I'm laughing my ass off. It's like, wait, how are kids that young? And you know, they're teens probably. But the bass player cracks me up the most because you can look at, they've got a shitload of videos. If you go on YouTube and search Mixed Up Everything, they'll pop up, and they're doing really well now. And the bass player's like fucking 9 or something. The bass is bigger than him, and he's doing really like spot on, note for note, you know, bass lines. Duff McKagan's bass line in Sweet Child, or, you know, Cliff Burton stuff from Metallica. And, you know, Jason Newsted, like all kinds of, like, Flea from the Chili Peppers, and playing it well. You know, the other guitars, you know, you always know a good musician when you see them. I'm always looking at the drummer and some of the hi-hat stuff that you know is really kind of intricate, and it's like, holy shit, no, that motherfucker's doing that. No, he's doing it right too. And you see it, and it's like, damn, man, that's really cool. And seeing, you know, 4 brothers in Australia, and I'll give you a sample of them. Here they are doing. Well, this is an instrumental. We can kind of buzz around because it's a Metallica, it's Orion instrumental, and it's, you know, 8.5 minutes long. But, you know, go ahead, E. Dude, it's a Metallica shirt on. The drummer, of course, is shirtless.
Of course.
But you know, I don't know if that's your lead or your rhythm on the right there. Metallica shirt on. You got a Def Leppard T-shirt, Scorpions. You guys are way too young to even know these bands. I love it. I just love seeing kids that age actually playing instruments and doing it, you know?
Yeah.
No turntables and bullshit like that. No, you know what I mean? No offense to that.
I know.
I'd be fine with that if there was still an equal amount of kids picking up guitars, for fuck's sake.
Dude, I love it. I love all of music, dude. So
fast forward a little bit, E.
Okay. I don't know.
I don't know if their dad's like Joe Jackson, just whipping the shit out of them every night, making, you know, just stomping them out. You fucking learn that song properly. Play the song again.
I don't.
No, go ahead, like in there somewhere. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I just don't know. Obviously. Oh. Uh-oh.
Yeah, that's a child playing that bass line.
Yeah, you're right, dude. Holy shit, is it taller than him?
Yeah, right? He's like a little pool. Plays adorable. That guy's adorable.
He's got the look, though, still.
How much pussy are these guys going to crush as time goes on? You know what I mean, E?
Probably already more than me.
Oh, yeah, for sure. You know? I mean, dude, you think about how hard it was for you.
I know.
The exact opposite for guys like this.
I would have given... And I never had a musical, and I still don't, like a timing and all that shit.
Get out of here.
But if I would, like, looking back, though, dude, you can be, I always say this, you can be in the shittiest cover band at the fucking bar in White Lake and get some pussy. You can be a pretty good comic and not necessarily get pussy from that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just saying, you know what I mean?
Well, see, now the language has gotten too strong. Can we have the bass player not listen to this?
Oh, shit.
Because you know, we don't want to warp his precious little mind.
Of course,
you know what I mean? Like he's definitely underage.
I'm sure he's in it just for the love of music and not girls at all.
He's definitely going to be crushing something soon. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You want to pull up another song maybe really quick? We'll play another one. And so they're on the beach playing "Creep" by Stone Temple Pilots, and singing well. Little bass player singing backup vocal, harmonizing with his brother.
I'll just do.
Yeah, just type in "Creep."
You want this one?
Yeah, there you go. That's one that's I don't know how long ago this was. This has got to be. Does it say when this was dropped down? I mean, he looks young. He looks even younger there, but.
I mean, this was published.
Oh, it was published
this year. In fact, like a month ago. Not this month. Already got 40,000.
Go ahead and fast forward into the song a little bit.
Yep.
But I can really tell they're. Sitting on a beach in Australia, you just see people walking by. It's kind of like watching Massey in that pizzeria, you know?
Yeah.
What was it, Pie Pizzeria?
Yeah.
And people are, you know, they're doing one of the most incredible renditions of Africa by Toto
Right.
ever. There's 3 vocalists that sing those harmony parts in Africa, and Massey does like all 3 of them.
Yeah.
In that song, and
Dude.
people are walking by with pizza and shit. There's no one there. They're golf clapping at the end of it.
I love shit like this. Like, I went to Muskegon one time, and they have like a music festival every year, and people just on the sidewalks do stuff like this where people are playing, and I just love it because it's so raw. It's not.
Yeah.
It wasn't remastered a million times. It wasn't in. I'm trying to think of the phrasing, but you know what I mean. That's just them fucking guitars.
Yeah.
On a sidewalk.
And I love that stuff. Like if I go to San Diego, you'll see shit like that on the the promenades
Yeah.
and some of the piers and stuff. You'll see random. A lot of times it's one guy
Right.
playing.
You very regular.
Now New York City, you go to Manhattan, go down on the subway, even on the streets of
I'll walk
Manhattan.
around Central Park on a Saturday.
Oh shit!
I
Yeah,
mean-
there's full bands
Right.
like crushing it out there. You're like, why are you not playing at Madison Square Garden tonight?
I've given money to people, man. I really have a few times when I've been in New York, just because I respect it that much. I think if you're really out there working, you're not just got the sign, you're fucking killing it.
Yeah.
Man, that's awesome, dude. Good for you. That's great, man.
Yeah, and you can tell they're brothers. Little man singing harmonies. I love that guy. Look at that poops. Well, kids, when you get to, if you make your way to America, you got a spot here. We want to have you in studio.
For sure.
Well, do a Sponge song, for Christ's sake. Why don't you guys rip off Plowed? Do that. I'll play it for Vinny for you. Yes, Vinny toured with Soundgarden, motherfucker. You guys do a Soundgarden song, so why don't you rip off Plowed? I'll play it for Vinny, and if you guys come here, we'll have Vinny do it with you guys. Deal? But you got to get yourselves here. I'm not flying your asses here.
They got to get to USA, but
Ask Jim Fox. Maybe he'll fly in.
right.
Anyway, yeah, really good stuff, man. There's a lot of that's the one good thing about the internet. It does give a lot of these people access. Well, we're proof of it too.
Another thing, just real quick to tell. I know, God, I feel like we have so many of these recently, but that's awesome, like to me. But stories that you just don't understand are going to happen. So when we did the tent, where Vinny came in and played in the tent, I found out that Vinny loved this, which was one of my favorites, this Jamie Johnson, country guy. And so I saw him in Grand Rapids a few weeks ago, and I showing Vin yesterday. I'm like, hey, I remember you saying you like Vinny or like Jamie? Here he is, dude. I just saw him 2 weeks ago, and he's like, that's fucking cool, man. That's fucking. And then D-Mac walks in. They're getting ready to do D-Mac show. D-Mac goes, yeah, I smoked down with Jamie Johnson once. And now I'm in a fucking conversation with Darren McCarty and Vinny. And
Well, Darren's only won 4 Stanley Cups.
well, true.
Vinny's won none.
Right, that's true.
But
but he's also toured the world and
yeah,
stuff and like that.
and he knew your boy, and,
Right,
and
knew my
Darren
boy.
smoked weed with him.
Right, and
you don't belong in that conversation.
I know
E.
I don't.
You just don't.
I
No
know I
offense.
don't.
I love you to death, bro, but you don't belong in that
Well,
conversation.
dude, I stood back, man. I stood back
Did
and then
you?
let them start talking about the.
I've done my part. Showed Vinny a picture.
Right, did my job, man.
Anyway, I should probably get a read-in. Wasik. Dude, well, no, I'll save it. We'll save it. Insurance, we all need it. Most of us don't know what kind of coverage we have or who provides it. Let fellow TDC listener Brent Wasik from Wasik Insurance Services change all that. Brent has well over 30 years in the business and offers all types of insurance coverage: auto, home, health, life, business, commercial, and more. Call Brent at 734-455-1900. Get a free, no-obligation quote today. Again, that's 734-455-1900. Ask for Brent Wasik at Wasik Insurance. Did you hear the news today, Isis? That the Drew and Mike show.
Yeah, I did.
Returning.
I'm interested. I was actually
to
shocked
the
you're talking
airwaves.
about it.
Why?
I don't know.
Why would that shock you?
I don't know.
Fuck those guys,
no.
man.
Well, I have an opinion on it, and so my opinion probably isn't the most positive, to be honest with you.
Oh,
but,
really?
Yeah.
Well,
so I don't have to give that, but
No. Well, sure, you can say whatever you want. I don't care. They won't care.
I know.
iHeartMedia, that's where Trudy's at, right?
Yeah.
1067 WLLZ.
Yep.
Which it sounds weird saying 1067 WLLZ.
Well, what was it? I know.
98.7,
Okay.
98.7 WLLZ.
Okay.
And they were our main competition when I was at Riff. LLZ was like, they were the two, and it was closer than like Riff and 89X. Like
Yeah.
they were two juggernaut, big, powerful rock stations in a top 10 market, big time. And
I knew it was
and I was
big,
an
but-
intern in 95, and I'll never forget the day Doug Podell, yeah, man, it's Dakar Rock.
The Dakar Rock.
The Dakar Rock, 101 WRIF. I love Doug. But Doug comes in, and he's like, we're still on the air, wrapping up the morning show, and Podell comes kicking in the fucking door, and he's like, yeah, man. He's got a bottle of champagne, and just boom, pops the cork. And he's like, yeah, they're gone, man. Wheels is off the air. All right. was like such a happy day. I mean, probably not for Detroiters who like two rock stations,
right.
but you know, if you're competing against them.
By the way, and I know obviously you have a million more than me because you legit worked there. I was just an intern or whatever. But I remember this was before I was even a Drew and Mike intern. I was a promo intern still.
Oh, yeah.
And so there was a point in my life where I was like sitting there where I was sitting right by you guys.
Come on in. Have a seat, George. We'll take a break in just a second, and we'll bring you in. Thanks, man.
I was sitting by kind of in your hall of the studios, but again, I'm a promo intern, so this is 2006.
Sure.
And your guys would kind of just go whenever, right? The show ended at 10:30
Sure,
technically.
whenever we wanted, yeah.
Right. And so there was a time, Doug Podell's office was across from what I was doing some intern work at, and apparently, for whatever reason, Drew decided to actually go out of the regular time that day.
Oh, yeah.
And I heard Doug go like, God damn it, are you serious? They're actually going on.
Every once in a while that would happen because we got on a streak for probably, I don't know, 10 years where we would never stop a minute before 10 to 11 or something.
Right.
Technically it was the 6 to 10. We would start at 6 and end at 11, maybe 11:15. And there were times when it was like we had to get down to opening day or something. We had to be off the air right at 10, or you know, there were the occasional days where, you know, Doug would usually know that. But when it was like, oh, we've got a movie premiere that we need to be at in 20 minutes. And so we'd have to get off the air at 10 and be like, fuck, man. I thought I had another hour and a half before I had to be on the air. What the fuck?
Dude, this was not one of those days. From my voice, my capture of his reaction, it was very much like, oh, shit, I got to fucking go to the studio now.
Now I got to get my ass in there and do this. So anyways, I saw this article today, and it was like, Drew Lane bringing the Drew and Mike show back to Wheels and mornings and something, but it didn't say much more than that. I was like, that seems weird. That seems like a story that if it was real, or if it wasn't fishy, it would be a press release. The TV stations would cover it. Drew would be in the newspapers giving interviews. So I was like, I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And so then Fox 2 did something, and they said the Drew is going to be bringing back the show to 106.7 Wheels. It'll air Saturday and Sunday mornings from 8 to 11. Will include content from their podcast.
So I was going to say, is it only going to be like someone's going to snip up parts that are able to make it to terrestrial radio from the week? Or are they doing any news?
It's got to be like
he's not coming in there on Sunday morning, is he?
I can't imagine the scenario where Drew would fucking come in on a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning
to do 4 hours of radio.
3 hours.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I don't know. I haven't talked to him, so I don't know what his plan is, but he's going to have radio and TV personalities stopping by, including Mark Fellhauer. Oh. No shock there.
Really?
Tom Mazaway.
Also the show.
Brandon McAfee. Jay Timko, local celebrity Jay Timko. And Trudy Daniels. A rotating cast of others as well is in the works. Drew says, I'm thrilled to be back on the air in a city I love. I know my friend Mike would have loved to be back on the air and to broadcast on the iconic WLLZ. That would have blown his mind. And they've already added it to the lineup on the station's website. So effective immediately.
Wow.
So my guess is they're going to have to do some censoring and cut up some content from the podcast that will then be, probably like a best of type thing. I don't know. This is just a guess.
Yeah.
That's all I can say. But yeah, I know Drew loves being on terrestrial radio and being on the dial in your car. So that's pretty exciting for him. And I know iHeart, they like the show. So
yeah,
bringing Trudy in to do,
I get it,
afternoons or whatever, midday, whatever she's doing, and then Drew, it makes sense. So congrats to them. Those forever be our guys. And why don't we take a quick time out, Isis, because Georgie Day just got here. Sorry, Georgie, I left a note on the fucking door. Here, come on in for a sec.
Yeah, cool.
Sorry. We've got a new studio here, so I'm trying to figure everything out. But yeah, you can sit down there, throw the headphones on. Yeah, we weren't supposed to be here today. We're here just for you. We knew you were flying into town. You got volume control over there if you want more volume next to you. And it was like, fuck, man, the writer, director, producer of this film's coming in. It's like, shit, we weren't supposed to be here. So my partner's not here, Jay, who would normally be here. But it's like, fuck it, Ian, I'll come in. We'll do it. Hang with him. Because you guys were nice enough to send us the film. We watched it. And but there's no one else here in the house. So I'm like, tape a note on the door. Let yourself in, man. We'll be downstairs.
Yeah, no worries. It was cool.
Yeah, good. Let me see. Do I have his mic on right?
It seemed definitely a little quiet.
Give me a
little quiet.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just...
There you go.
Yeah, I think I was
just
just too far away from the mic. No worries, man. It was great.
Good. Well, we're happy you're here, man, that we love the movie. We'll deep dive into all of it, dude, so I hope you got some time.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, cool. And so why don't we take a quick time out? My questions and all that shit are upstairs, so we'll go grab that, and we'll be back in a moment.
The Detroit Cast continues after this short break. continues now, bitches. Here are Mike and Jay.
Well, usually it's Mike and Jay. Not this time. Anyway, welcome back to the show. And we're lucky we got Geordie Day in studio. Writer, director, producer, everything. You get a lot of the credits in this film, which is good. A lot of work, though, I'm sure. Tough Guy, the Bob Probert story. Dude, what a perfect name for a Bob Probert story. Were you kicking around other ideas for it, or is it just like, no, Tough Guy's the way you got to go?
Well, the origin for the documentary. So
Yeah.
basically, my mom writes like hockey player books. Like that's like her job.
Yeah. How cool of a job is that, you know?
It's neat. Yeah, it's really cool. So she's done that for like 10 years. So
Kirsty McClellan Day.
Yeah. So she wrote like Theron Fleury's book, and she wrote a book with Wayne Gretzky, and she wrote the book with Bob.
Yeah.
And so while she was working on the book with Bob back in 2010, she had been conducting like taped interviews with him, and she had hours and hours and hours and hours of taped interview. And then he passed a couple months later. So she had been sitting on these interviews, and I think what got us excited about the documentary would be to have him tell his story in his own words. So he narrates the documentary throughout.
So
which is kind of the idea.
So she was helping him. She's a legend in the book writing hockey world. You know, you don't just get Wayne Gretzky and, you know, write a book with him. So she's doing it with Bob Probert. He's chosen her to like help me do this, write this book. And they're working on that. And then he dies before it's finished. And Danny, his wife, took it and kind of ran with it to finish it.
Totally.
Am I right about that?
100%.
Yeah.
And they had all these interviews. So
But
so that book was called Tough Guy, and so we
Right.
took the same kind of title. We took the same title. We thought it was perfect.
It fits.
It's perfect.
Danny came in studio when the book was first coming out years ago, and I got to tell you, man, I literally fell in love with that woman when she came in studio. She was
100%, yeah.
amazing.
Right.
I couldn't believe, you know, yeah, she's gorgeous, all that, but she was so fun and told such a great story and a true love story. You know, when I thought of a movie on Bob Probert, and, you know, Danny and the kids are a big part, obviously, of Bob's life, but there's a lot of trouble that comes with Bob Probert, and it's very documented and storied. And it was like, was it hard? Because the love story works. You don't have to be a hockey fan to get this movie, in my opinion. Were you worried about that? Was it hard? Like, I don't want Bob to come off where people go, God, that guy was an asshole. Why couldn't he get his shit together? Because he doesn't really come off that way.
Good. I mean, that's the goal. I think from our perspective, the idea was because he's the person telling these stories. So actually, I'll kind of go back here.
Okay.
Basically, the concept was that we were going to use this notorious persona that he kind of had established as like this badass hockey player, rock star, had been caught at the border with cocaine kind of thing. And that was sort of the public perception. But then everybody that knew him, like his family and friends and everything, obviously knew him as this loving, caring guy.
Right.
And so we wanted to kind of play with that duality. So we have so we have the news stories in there where the news is like, and the newspapers are literally like tearing him apart. Like, how could he do this? This is like, what an awful person. You see him on the ice and these brutal fights. And then in contrast, you see him at home and you see him as this really loving, caring guy towards his family and friends. And
Danny tells some really cool stories about going in to kiss each kid goodnight with their own little nicknames. I mean, it really rounds it out. You know, people will see the family guy in that. But don't be fooled for a second. Hockey fans, I mean, seeing Bob Probert on the ice kicking the shit out of people, I could watch for eternity. I mean, they're just...
It's amazing.
The opening of the film, Ty Domi, is... I so remember that. And you got Ty Domi to do interviews about it, and it was so cool to the contrast, like the back and forth. Here's Ty Domi now talking about it, and you've got the video, you're showing it. And then, in Bob's words, you know, talking about the second round, you know, the big New York fight, and it's anticipation galore, and he's like, get over here, you fucking little shit, you know. And Bob, it's just so cool, man. I'm glad you got guys like that to contribute, you know, the Ty Domis of the world. And I mean, it had to be neat. It
was great. And I mean, one of the first things that I did while researching was just listen through the tapes and listen to like, okay, like what do we have here in terms of material? What is it he said? And I remember, listening to him commentate on all these sort of legendary fights. I was like, oh, this would be so great to have his voice under the fights, and he's kind of walking us through it.
Yeah.
And I remember when he got to the Tai Domi part, and he's like, oh, just at the time, I was just thinking, like, Tai Domi, that little fucker. And I was like, when I heard that, I remember thinking, like, that'll be the first line of the documentary. Tai Domi, he was a little fucker.
Yeah.
And that's how we started.
It's perfect, though. It works because we remember those fights. Jay and I were talking about it yesterday. We were mentioning that you were going to be here. And the cool thing about those days in hockey was it was like sometimes it was better to have a 7-0 game in the second because you knew the gloves were coming off in the third, and they were just going to get it on. And so you could get, you wouldn't do that in a 2-1 game because you didn't want to put your team in a bad spot, giving a power play away because, it's a tight game. But you wouldn't shut a game off, And Tai Domi was this little fucking 5'8" rat dude, but tough as nails. You got to respect
100%.
Tai Domi. I mean, he's a bad dude. And
100%, yeah. Especially if you see these guys in person and you see the size differential. I mean, then you sort of appreciate it on a whole other level. When you see someone that's
ridiculous,
6'5" and is like 260 pounds, and you see his size, and you're like, he fought that? That's impossible. It's hard to even wrap your head around.
That second fight, I mean, Probert kicks the shit out of him. And there's a point in that fight where Domi's head is down, and Bob is just like, what did he give him? 9 straight shots to the face, just wham, wham. And it's like, Domi doesn't go down. He's not going down. Tough little dude, man. Anyway, I know people around here are going to be really excited for this. It's a Tough Guy, the Bob Probert story. Opens in theaters today. It's Thursday, April 11th. Exclusively at the Imagine Michigan locations in Birch Run, Canton, Heartland, Macomb, Novi, Palladium, Rochester Hills. Royal Oak is a great one, and Saline. You can go to toughguymovie.com and it'll show you everywhere it's playing, and you can get tickets. I'm assuming you get tickets there too.
All the links are.
And that's gonna be a lot of fun. Are you gonna be out at any of these? I'm sure you've seen the movie, right?
I've seen it a few times.
Yeah,
I've seen it a time or two, but I'll be at the premiere tonight at the Patriot Theater as a part of the Detroit Free Press Film Festival.
Yeah.
And I'll be at the show tomorrow as well, the Imagine Royal Oaks.
Oh,
and
yeah.
we're doing Q&As for that. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so we're really excited.
Dude, that's going to be a lot of fun. Those Q&As are really cool. The theater in Royal Oak is, I don't know if you've been there yet.
I haven't.
Because you're a Canadian. You're one of our neighbors to the north.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right, yeah. We've got a lot of listeners in Canada, actually.
Yeah, it's a really cool. Detroit, it's so great because we have this like great big American city right next to Canada, and that connection's really interesting.
It is, man. It's awesome, and we get emails from people all the time, and it's funny. We're like, Jay will say, what does he say, neighbor?
O-U-R.
O-U-R, yeah, because the spelling's a little off on neighbor with Canadian, so we can always identify our Canadian listeners by that.
I know, but I was talking to a bunch of people last night here in Detroit, and they were telling me, they're like, oh, we're huge Tragically Hip fans, and we like all these like Canadian bands. And
Yeah.
it was kind of blowing my mind.
Well, it's because we're so close to Canada that we get the Canadian radio channels, and they have to play a certain amount of Canadian.
Yeah.
They have to. So you're just
Yeah, by
forced
law.
upon
Yeah.
us.
So
Yeah, the CRTC, they have to play 50% Canadian. So,
Yeah.
But I hadn't
So you get a
really
lot of- what is it?
considered that Detroit would be fans of like all these like Canadian bands, or at
Yeah.
least they haven't. They're like, oh no, Tragically Hip's huge in Detroit.
Huge. They're huge. They all are. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones.
Even Nickelback, whatever people say
Nickelback,
about it. But
yeah.
Yeah.
we have the 89X in the area, and that's a huge station, and that's a Canada station. So
it's so
Yeah.
close that it all, you get it.
all
It's
bleeds.
not even like you get it for half of Detroit.
No,
it's
everyone gets
like
89X.
all over Metro Detroit. You get, so you're stuck listening to, not stuck, but you get to hear, Alanis Morissette and was it Bryan Adams? Aren't they Canadians?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not familiar.
Tragically
much with
Hip. They're probably wondering, why do
funny.
we have such a huge following in Detroit? It's weird.
I know. I was also talking to some people yesterday, like at a festival party, and they were talking about how they're on the dating apps, like on Tinder and Bumble, and they can
Yeah.
match with all the Canadians.
Yeah,
They're, like,
absolutely.
dating back and forth across the border.
International
It's kinda cool.
dating. Yeah,
Yeah.
Dude, we know a guy that did that. Married a girl, and it's like half the time he's in Canada at her place, and half the time, K-Dog.
Yeah.
and
That's
half the
hilarious.
time here, and getting dual citizenship and shit. But
Plus,
love it.
another unique thing that I know it's so corny to tell somebody, but when you talk about that, this is the only place in the country that you can go south to get to Canada. So
right.
you can be
That's
north
true.
and go south to get to Windsor, which is a very odd thing.
yeah, but it is true. We all know that little
I
trivia
know
around
it's
here.
just kind of stupid, but
Yeah, it was actually a Jeopardy question at one point.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yep.
one.
Was it easy or hard to get these guys to open up and talk? Because you have a lot of guys, Ty Domi, Stu Grimson, Don Cherry, Joe Koser. More than 30 guys gave interviews for this. Was it hard to get them to open up or easy?
It wasn't hard, honestly. I was really blown away by how thoughtful everyone, like all these retired hockey players were. And they just had like beyond the game, just had everyone had a really interesting, thoughtful perspective on life.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that just comes with, I think living a very hectic, maybe hectic's the wrong word, but like kind of like a gnarly lifestyle, like fighting for a living, 80 fights a year.
Yeah.
It's a tough thing to go through. And so there's definitely a brotherhood there. And I think that gives them an interesting perspective, having to go through that level of intensity, that level of stress, and also like retiring at like 40.
Yeah.
You know, where you peak so young and then you're done. That's
Yeah.
such a heavy thing to go through, and to like lose all the fame and in a lot of instances lose a lot of the money.
And lose also the guy, like when you're at that elite level
Yeah.
of sport, your schedule is done for you for 7
Exactly.
8 months of the year, and your bags are packed and the bus is waiting for you, and there's you don't have to do, your meals are planned, your hotels are booked, you don't have to do shit, and then all of a sudden you open the door to the world when you retire, and you can do anything.
It's wide open.
It's wide open. And you've literally, especially in hockey, these kids, a lot of them leave their home at 13, 14, 15.
Exactly.
And move out, and they're basically on their own, with these teams. It's almost like a professional league.
Well, in
at
some
those
cases it
ages.
is. I mean, like
Yeah.
the WHL, like all the junior leagues, they basically are professional leagues. Like, they sell tickets. It's tough
Yeah,
to...
posters. You got
Yeah.
some footage in there. Great footage, by the way, of
man.
of Probie and juniors. And they, you can see the concessions and people lined up buying posters and pucks, and I mean, it is a full business. But imagine, was it hard to track down some of that footage?
Yes.
Yes, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, luckily, there's such a die-hard fan base for hockey fighting. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
it's like even more specific to because
Go
there
on
are
YouTube.
There are exactly right. Like
Crazy.
YouTube's a great example of like there are a lot of really iconic, important moments in hockey, goals and things that you'd be hard pressed to find anywhere. But virtually any hockey fight that's ever happened,
Yeah.
literally in the
documented.
NHL, is on YouTube.
And
So
you
I
can
mean
find-
that tells you something in terms of the fact that there is a die-hard hockey fight fan base and community.
We used to have Mickey Redmond on all the time. He was on with us for years, and there is something special about seeing a Don Cherry or a Mickey Redmond light the fuck up when it talk about hockey fight, and it killed them that hockey went in a different direction. And you can hear it in your movie, you can hear it in the clips on YouTube, and it's just like, oh, we got a Donnybrook, and they're like, look at that big boy over there. And they're just so they just love it. They love these
Yeah.
guys, and they always make the great points. No one's getting up for a beer during this, and it's so true, man. It's so true. Now, one thing I know is getting the NHL to let people use their logos, their license their stuff, or you can get a license, you can get a permit for a festival or something, but getting those guys to sign off, and the NHL is notorious, is really hard and really expensive. But you guys did it. There's the movie on the Russian Five. They did two, which I think is critical. That movie,
Great
can't.
movie, by the way.
It's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so cool around here to have these two great movies.
Yeah, and that guy's just such a nice guy. Josh, we talked to him a little bit.
Oh
like,
yeah,
over
he's been over here a
online.
couple times. Jenny Fatarovich was here
What a
yesterday.
great
the
guy,
producer.
yeah.
Oh, he's awesome. Yeah. But and I've talked to him at length about that. He's like, "Oh, you have no idea." I remember watching him. He'd be over here, and it's like, dude, you have no idea. You have no fucking clue how hard it
Yeah.
what the NHL. I don't have that kind of money. How hard was it for you guys to get them to let you use their footage?
Well, we argued fair use, so we went a different route, and it's a difficult process. So it became more of an issue of just tracking down the best quality footage that we could find. And again, like it just kind of goes back to the fact that there is this diehard hockey fight community. So the footage was out there, and we were able to get our hands on it from collectors and whatnot.
And so the NHL doesn't own. I would think they would own the rights to anything on the ice, and they would go, nope, that's our stuff.
They do. You're just making the argument that you're using it for journalistic purposes through like a documentary. So that's
Really?
different. Yeah.
No kid, and that works. Can this be considered like journalistic over here? because I want to use the winged logo. You know, Darren does a show here, and it's like,
Right.
I remember early in talks, it was like, well, if we're doing a logo for you, you know, can we use one of you holding the cup up and stuff? And he's like, I'm like, if the wing wheel is in it, and he's like, nope. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, what if you're doing a slap shot and your jersey's wrinkled and you can see like half the wing? And he's like, dude, let's just avoid the wing wheel.
Yeah, you got to be
You know,
careful.
yeah, they didn't want anything to do with it, but yeah. Anyways, how big was Danny Probert in the whole process of this? Was she critical?
Oh, huge.
Yeah.
And I mean, you mentioned this earlier, but Danny's just an amazing person. Really, I mean, it was so going into the documentary. I had read the book, but I was kind of like everyone else, where I knew of Bob's kind of notorious reputation. I knew that he had addiction issues, and I've done documentaries with people that had been addicts in the past, and usually the territory that comes with that is you upset a lot of people.
Sure.
And a lot of times you kind of have falling out with your family, and there's there's a path you've left in that wake.
Yeah.
Of getting sober, but
And
meeting
he
that
left
family,
quite awake with her. I mean, that I was shocked, like,
but the family's amazing. Like those kids and Danny, they're just incredible. Like, you talk to those kids, they're so smart, they're so
Yeah.
charismatic. Tierney's been doing is going to be doing some Q&As with me. I mean, I don't know how to like really describe it,
Yeah.
but you meet them, and you're blown away by them, and you've met Danny, and you realize that, like,
Yes.
and just how they've taken that situation of like such a tragic situation, witnessing Bob pass on the family's boat,
and the kids were there, and
It's awful.
Her dad is. I mean,
Absolutely
I can't even
awful.
imagine.
But then, you know, they've taken that situation, they put on this incredibly successful charity event where they've raised $1 million for cardiac care in Windsor.
Yeah,
And that just speaks to the
$1 million
family's
bucks.
courage and just who Danny is as a person.
Well, it had to be hard for her, though. I that's the impression I got. Now, this is many
Oh, I
years
think
ago when she finished his book, and
I think it's hard for her now.
Now, yeah.
In fact, I know it is.
Yeah.
I think it's a really difficult thing emotionally to relive. I know when we were watching it at the screening in Windsor, it was tough, and it's still tough for the kids.
What do you think this was? Do you think it was important for her to finish that book and help with the movie so the kids have this, to get another side of the story, that no, he's not just a guy that got busted with coke at the border and DUIs and beat people up in the NHL, but it's a documentary, you know, that really shows, you know, don't forget this side of your dad too. Do you think that's part of it?
For sure. And I mean, I think that's what what Bob had said. The idea behind wanting to do the book was just there was so much out there, and he wanted to have the opportunity to contextualize it so at least it was accurate. Like, at least this is okay. It's out there. This is what actually happened. And I think he wanted to have his kids have that opportunity.
Sure.
And so I think for Danny, it is what you say. Like, she wanted to finish that mission. She wanted her kids to be able to understand where he was coming from, what was going on, why these things happened. And I think the documentary is really just a continuation of that.
Well, it's a real testament to their relationship, because it's really, really hard to keep a relationship going when you have one issue, you know,
Yeah.
popped with DUI or drinking problem, drug problem. There's only so much a person will take before it's like, you know what, I can't do this anymore. But Danny seemed to just like, this is my guy, and whatever he's going through, we'll go through together. And I mean, there's some heartbreaking parts in that where she's 8.5 months pregnant, and he's, you know, in the hospital, handcuffed to a fucking bed,
Yeah.
you know, and she comes waddling in, and it's like, I can't even imagine what's going through her mind in that moment, or his.
Yeah.
You know, how you explain that, like, here we are again.
Yeah, totally.
You know, I mean, it's incredible. But she's there and still there, you know, with him and the kids. Jack's not in it.
He's not, yeah.
Probert. Was that something just hard to line up schedules, or is he not interested, or?
He's seen the documentary. He likes the documentary. Great guy, by the way.
Yeah, I've never met him, but
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome guy. but I think it just had, honestly, I think it just has more to do with like nerves. I think it's really difficult for anybody to go on camera and open up
Yeah.
and talk about some of these things, especially as traumatic an event like that. Mm-hmm. And so I think him not participating in the documentary had more to do with that than like not.
Yeah.
There was no issues like.
Yeah. Fuck that. I'm not doing that. You
No,
know?
nothing like that.
Yeah.
He's not like that at all. I mean, he's like the kindest, sweetest guy ever.
Well, his twin sister's in it.
Yeah.
Declan.
Declan's in it, yeah.
Declan's in it, and Tierney and Brogan. And I think it's so funny. I was talking to Mac just briefly about it last night. And it's like Tierney's dating Griffin.
Right.
McCarty, Darren's. So probably two of the most legendary, tough guy badasses in the NHL, and their kids are dating.
I know, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool, You should have got Darren in the movie.
That was a scheduling issue.
Yeah, that's what he said, too.
Yeah, that was a scheduling issue. We wanted to have him in it.
He makes some appearances in it,
That's true, right? Like, and there
Yeah.
there are some guys that we weren't able. I mean, there aren't many. We tried to get as many as possible, but there are a couple guys that like we weren't able to actually do a sit down with. But they still play a part in the movie because they played a part in his life, and they're still like on the ice. They're still part of stories.
Yeah.
They're still in there.
Well, it's really cool, too, for Wings fans, and we remember those teams and the fighting and whatnot, and guys like Probert and Koser became absolute rock stars. These are the days when people wear a bag on their head, Dead Wings, the signs, the Dead Wings, before, Del Vecchio got here and those guys and started putting together a different type of team. And
Right.
so the Bruise Brothers, I remember having a t-shirt, the Bruise Brothers, the cartoons.
Yeah.
I had a Probert jersey, my buddy had a Koser jersey, and you just love those guys. And
Right. I mean, they kind of saved the team. I mean,
Oh, for
financially
sure.
speaking, because it was. You're right. It was before. We were talking about the Russian Fives. It was before the Russian
Yeah.
guys got there, and even,
Yzerman's a baby.
right. And before, before the Wings, before the Wings were winning, people were coming to see Koser and Bob fight. Mm-hmm. That was the draw.
Who do you think is a batter, as far as like pound for pound, fist for fist on the ice, tougher guy, Koser or Probert?
I mean, I don't think that I'm the guy to ask. They're both insane.
Yeah.
The most common, like in all honesty, the person amongst most fighters, I think of that era, they say Bob Probert was number one
Yeah.
in terms of who is the best fighter on the ice. But like pound for pound, I don't know. A lot of tough guys told us that Koser hit the hardest.
Well,
He had the
that's where I was
hardest
going with this. That
Yeah.
we've talked to McCarty at length about this. He tells some great stories, but he's like, dude, like when you get to that level in the
Yeah.
NHL, like the refs are so important. Like they will step in. Like you can kill a guy. Like
Yeah.
if you go toe to toe with the wrong guy on the ice in the NHL,
Yeah.
you can get killed from a punch.
100%.
And,
Yeah.
and he's like, Joey Koser's right hand is a sledgehammer. You get hit with Joey Koser's hand, and I started looking at some video of Joey, and there's a couple videos online where he hits a guy, and a guy is out before he fucking hits the ice.
You used to see knockouts. I mean,
Yeah.
that's one thing that I didn't totally appreciate until I started working on the documentary. I had grown up watching hockey, but I didn't really remember the fight.
Yeah.
Like those specific guys fighting that well. It was quite a long while ago for me, like early 90s, right?
I was going to say, you're 20, what are you, 28?
Yeah, I'm 28, so it's a little
mean,
bit before my time, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm used to the hockey fights now where it's a little bit more grappling. Guys might get some
Yeah.
you get punches in, but it's rare that it's like a huge right hook kind of thing. And going through the footage and seeing how many knockouts Probert and Koser had, and what you used to be able to get away with. Like you talk about like Koser would like punch someone, knocked out on their feet, he's dropping, and he'd throw another
one.
punch as the guy's hitting the ice, like just crazy stuff. And
Yeah.
for sure, I mean
Yeah.
that's what we know now about concussions and
I know.
and brain trauma. Like that's dangerous. And
Oh, yeah.
for sure.
Darren was telling me he actually got into a fight with Koser on the ice when he was,
Yeah.
I think Joey was in New York at the time, and Darren obviously a Red Wing. And he said he got one punch in on me or something and knocked me down and fell down on top of me. And I just looked up and said, "Thank you, Mr. Koser, for not taking my head." I'm like, and he's like, "Yeah, you're all right, kid." He's like, I wanted nothing to do with Joey Koser's right hand.
Well, and that's a reality of filling that role is, there's a lot of anxiety. Like, if you can imagine, and you see some of these guys, how big they are. I
Yeah.
talked to a fighter, he's not in the doc, this was like for something else, but I was like, he was saying that, I just couldn't sleep. You know, like I just couldn't sleep
Yeah.
before a game. It was tough to take naps. You know, you're just like constantly living in this state of anxiety. And I was like, well, what were you scared of? And he said that. He said, I was scared of dying. Like I was scared that someone was going to kill me.
Yeah.
And you do understand that when you see someone that's like 250, like some of the guys now that fight, and you meet them in person, the idea of fighting someone like that is, I mean, it's hard to even wrap your head around.
Yeah. And you don't want to, you know, if they drop the gloves in front of you, what are you going to do? Like walk away? I mean, you're scared.
Well, if you're filling that role, you got to do it.
Yeah,
That's your job.
And you know, so teams started bringing goons in. That you know, they weren't the best. They couldn't skate very well, but they could whip ass. You know, they could do that. But they weren't. Probert was so different. McCarty is so different.
Yeah,
because
good players.
You know what I mean? Good players. I mean, Probert had a 29-goal season, a 20-goal season, a 19-goal season.
Yeah,
you know those are legit.
He had a few.
You know, All-Star one year.
Yeah, I think he had 62 points one
Yeah.
year. So, yeah, and he was an All-Star that year.
Yeah.
So he was a really good player for sure.
The original tough guy is probably Al Probert.
Yeah, right.
You know, his dad.
Right.
And I love it. I think it's so funny. What are you laughing at, E?
Oh, just the story in the movie, man.
Yeah,
about,
I won't give the story away,
Okay,
but you know,
okay.
it's like, yep, I can see a Probert doing it. You know, but I love when you first see his mom, Teresa, and of course she's in a neck brace. And it's like, of course a Probert is in a neck brace. You know what I mean? It just, I don't know why that made me laugh, and I don't know what happened. You know, why she's there. If she got a little whiplash in a car accident,
Right? Yeah. That was
but dude, yeah, it's interesting relationship though. Between that family, you know, you guys point out how was it Norm, his brother, who never was able to quite get to that level, that top level that Bob was, and Bob was very guilty about that.
Yeah, I think from what I understand, Norm was a really, really good hockey player, and good enough that he could have made the NHL. But
Yeah.
you know, sometimes it just doesn't happen. Cards just like don't fall
Yeah,
the way you'd like them to, and I think that happens sometimes where, you know, one brother finds success and another one doesn't, and it's difficult to sometimes difficult to deal with. And I think Bob carried a lot of guilt about that, or at least that's at least what we were told.
right. And it's odd to me. Sorry, I'll let
you're
you
good.
ask in a second, but it's weird to me because Bob Probert didn't do anything wrong. He got drafted and went to the Wings and had success. It's like, for whatever reason, that doesn't happen for Norm. You know, it could be a myriad of things that made that not happen. But, you know, it sounds like I think maybe it was Danny was saying, you know, like Bob carried tremendous guilt for that. And then his family was pretty good at heaping the guilt and shame onto him. Like his mom and Norm could kind of guilt Bob further. And I'm like, well, what would that be for? Like, why would... It's hard for me to wrap my head around. Obviously, you know, I just think if my brother was successful, my sister in something doing really well, I'd be just thrilled. But
well, they certainly seem thrilled now. Like that I've met with them. I don't know, right? Like, I mean, that's like one thing about documentary is you just kind of give. You do the interviews and you let people tell you the story,
right,
and what it is, and so yeah, I don't know, but I think a lot of us can kind of relate to that. Maybe not the survivor's guilt thing. You know what I mean? Like sometimes,
that's true.
And sometimes in life, when you find success, it's more complicated than just feeling sweet.
Right.
You know what I mean? Sometimes you do kind of feel bad, and you do kind of question, why is this happening to me? And like, why can't this be happening to other people? And
it's probably really hard for people like us to understand what it's truly like to get that level of celebrity and fame too.
I mean,
like
he's
that
huge.
adds,
Yeah.
I mean, that adds an element. It's not like, you know, oh, my brother's really successful at such and such company, but when you're Bob Probert, like that's got to be really tough to go to dinner with your family and 500 people want your autograph and your picture every time you go out. You know, that's so. I guess there's elements that we don't really fully understand, and I'm not judging them for anything, but
for sure. And it's not like they didn't have a great relationship. As I understand it, Bob and Norm were best friends for.
Yeah.
I mean, really, from the time they were children till the time Bob passed, and
that's pointed out too.
Yeah, for sure.
What were you going to say, E?
Well, you know, you kind of hit on it with the relationship, the pressure, but as you explained that, it made me think, like, so what was throughout, like, the relationship between Danny and, like, Probert's brother and mom? Do they like each other? Do they, you know what I mean? Is there still animosity at all? Or, because it seemed like they really didn't want him to marry her. And so I'm just curious about that.
That was, I think now they get along quite well. I think that was like, the context of the bite is that's where they were at the time.
Yes, totally.
But this was, I mean, this is like more than 30 years ago,
right.
So it's like,
Yeah.
so
But
things change in families, and sometimes
it's fair because it's talked about in the movie, and it's like, what?
It is fair,
You
yeah,
know what I
yeah.
mean? So I know what he's saying, but
Totally.
And if you put yourself back 30 years ago, and it's like, okay, Bob Probert's a kid who's running around fucking everything that moves. He's doing drugs. He's a superstar, and now this hot chick comes in the mix. Oh, you're the one.
Well,
You know,
and that's
there's
why those
probably-
kind of things are in the doc, right? Like, I
Yeah.
mean, you always have to question, why did I put this in the movie? And if the reason can't be because it's like juicy gossip, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to, it has to come from a more. It has to be in there because like it speaks to a greater truth, and so I think it's those kind of issues that he was going through speak on the themes of like addiction, and they speak of like what it means to be playing in the NHL and issues that like a lot of other people face.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. I wanted to ask you because your mom has been so successful writing, with these guys and access to the Theo Fleury's and Wayne Gretzky's and name it. She's done a lot of those. Could you have picked? Could you have gotten and gone? I want to do a documentary on the book you and Gretzky wrote. And I'm wondering, at 28, you wouldn't have been around through these years with Bob when he was doing his thing. You're not from Detroit. Why this one? Or you know what I mean?
Right. I mean, I certainly don't. I'm not in a position where I can sort of just pick and choose like any
Yeah, yeah.
documentary and it'll get greenlit tomorrow.
Right.
But basically, what had happened was I had done a documentary a couple of years ago on a Clint Malarchuk.
Okay.
Actually, it was a little longer than that.
Oh,
now. It
he's
was
the one
actually
that died?
2015. So no, he's still alive, but he got run in his crease. He was a goaltender for Buffalo.
Okay.
And they cut his jugular vein, and he nearly bled to death on the ice.
On the ice, yep.
So he's famous for that incident, which is now kind of like a viral YouTube clip.
Yeah.
But that incident triggered PTSD in him, and he had kind of lost his mind for a while. He'd kind
Yeah.
of flown off the rails, and he was living in Nevada, and he ended up shooting himself in the face and surviving that. And so he had lived kind of this tumultuous lifestyle after that. So I had done that documentary for a broadcaster up in Canada, and so they were interested in another hockey story. Mm-hmm. And of all my mom's books, and I really like them. I'm really proud of her success. Tough Guy always spoke to me the most. Bob just reminded me the most of, like, I grew up playing hockey and all my friends had played hockey, and he just reminded me of some of like my best friends growing up playing hockey. Like,
Yeah,
that-
real and
a real, and just like I don't know, just like his personality, and that book just spoke to what I think is difficult for people to understand about hockey culture, I guess, like the camaraderie and like the loving nature behind it all kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, it's weird. There was something about Bob Probert that, there's a lot of guys that fought in the league. There's a lot of superstars. But Bob, Stevie talks about it in there, and him and when they went to the All-Star game. And it's like you walk in to, the locker, whatever, and it's like Gretzky and, all the biggest names are like, holy shit, that's Bob Probert. Like, they want to meet Bob Probert. They want a picture. Mr. T wants to meet Bob Probert.
Right,
The
exactly.
Hanson brothers want to meet Bob Probert. Like, he was bigger than everybody. And so there was something more about him than just your average tough guy or,
100%.
yeah.
Yeah. It was an interesting period in the game where some of these tough guys were, superstars. Mm-hmm. Whereas, as you mentioned, like he was but he was an all-star player too. So I think that plays a part. But like Domi was really famous as well, and there were a few guys.
Yeah.
McSorley.
Yep.
And
Grimson.
yeah, and you just, I guess, Grimson, and I guess you don't see that as much now, although there aren't really that many enforcers, but particularly in, I guess, that like late 80s, early 90s, where those tough guys were just bigger than life, and people were coming to see them fight Like they were buying tickets to see them fight.
And it felt very blue collar at the time. Like this is a very
Right.
blue collar city, and seeing a guy, just run a fucking goalie. I mean,
It's shocking to see now.
Shocking. It's funny as shit. The goalie's like, he did something wrong, and Probert walks up, just bang, punches him in the face.
Him in the face.
Like, who the hell does Probert does?
It's insane. Yeah.
And the place would go berserk. They just loved it.
Yeah.
One of the things that jumped out at me, because you think you know the story, but you really don't.
Right.
How early the trouble started with Bob Probert.
Right.
It's not 7 years into his career that things started. It's almost immediate.
Right.
That he gets introduced to cocaine and he's already drinking. Who knows? His dad dies and like the next day he's off to juniors. Doesn't grieve really. I'm wondering if that played an impact and led him down this path, or I don't know. It just seems odd. Like I would have thought it wouldn't have been so early, and he keeps getting chances. Do you think the organization did enough to help Bob Probert? My answer is no. You can
Okay.
answer. You can say whatever you want.
You can have your own take. It's
Yeah.
hard. Like I tried not to definitively answer those questions.
Yeah.
Like, in the docs I do, I just try and like sort of present what's closest to the truth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and so I don't know. Like, it's tough to say, right? I think they tried their best for what they knew at the time. I think speaking with, I've talked to a guy that's worked in addiction in the league now, and hearing what his method was to work with the team, I can see why their strategy in Detroit didn't work with Bob and why it wouldn't be effective in terms of treating an addict.
Yeah.
But I think they just didn't know any better. Like they didn't really know how to handle him.
And I think
but
that's
even like
fair.
Colin Campbell now says, I think is on your side, right?
Yeah.
So he was essentially, for anyone that doesn't know, was assistant coach and was put in charge of Bob's sobriety, essentially.
What was it? Jacques Demers said or was it was it Jim Price or Jim Lights that said who's going to keep a fucking eye on this? And it was just like Campbell's just like I guess I can.
Exactly,
And
right?
now he's a chauffeur basically, or a AA coach.
On top of being an assistant coach,
Right.
they kind of gave him the special responsibility of looking after Bob. And I think, he's trying his best. He loved Bob. He really cared about him. But as he says in the documentary, he's like, we wanted him healthy so that he could continue to play, but in order to treat an addict, sometimes that can't be the
Right.
motive, right? You have to think, in terms of long-term care, he might need to go and seek help longer than like 2 weeks.
Right.
He might need to be out for a while and truly deal with some of these
Yeah,
demons.
and putting it in a 2019 context isn't fair.
That's the
them.
point. That's the thing.
Yeah, when you
That's
take
the
it to
thing.
the 80s, it just was. It was a
a
different
time, right?
We
Like,
didn't
culturally
really
and-
know, addiction was a shameful thing. And now that
Exactly.
it still is, there's still the embarrassment. I mean, I've had my issues. I get it. I know what it's like to feel like you're disappointing people you care about and friends
Yeah.
and family. It's horrible. You feel like a total piece of shit.
Yeah.
And back then it was even worse. Now they're trying to get that out of there. It's it's a disease. It's not, and I don't know what I believe fully on that. Personal responsibility comes in a lot of respects, but it was really tough to watch. Here's a guy who's a superstar. He's got his troubles. They're documented and they're bad. You're talking about, serious years in prison for some of the shit that Bob was involved with. And, he's trying, and he's at the bar with a bunch of teammates, and it's like, come on, Bob, do a shot. And it's like, no, I'm staying sober. And
100%.
You know,
And I
and-
think it's really like you talk about the times have changed, but also, people still do it now where I don't think any famous person is treated more harshly than a professional athlete, right? Like they're
Yeah.
under more scrutiny than anybody.
Well, there's
by
a good reason
fans,
for
by
that.
people that hate them.
Right. There's a reason for that,
They
though.
make good money, and like they well, what do you
Even more. Like, if Brad Pitt has a problem, it's like,
Yeah.
what's the worst that's going to happen? The movie's not going to be as good. the team lives in, like, the fans live and die with his team. And if you've got someone that's
Right.
shit-faced the night before a game and plays sloppy and shitty on the ice,
Right, okay,
you
fair enough.
fuck the whole thing up for all of us.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
There's way
Like, you
more on
feel
their
a part of
shoulders.
Okay, yeah, no, exactly. And so, but it's easy to forget that they're people.
Yeah.
Right? Like that if you were under that kind of stress and you were put in that situation, and if you're actually empathizing, like you're actually thinking of like, I'm playing 83 games
Yeah.
in a year, I'm constantly on the road, and like how hard that lifestyle probably is, like would be, and to be an addict on top of that, and to be dealing with all those issues and be dealing with the physical pain and all of it.
They're wired differently.
I think that's just gold. Like the goal of the documentary is just to look at him in a more human way.
Yeah, and it's hard. We're such a celebrity-driven society.
Right,
You
right,
know what I
right.
mean?
Yeah, yeah,
and,
totally.
And I see it. If you go somewhere with Darren McCarty, it's just like people just they don't know what to do. Like, holy fuck, was that a ghost? Did that really just happen? Like, they freak the fuck out a lot of times.
Yeah, yeah.
And you know, it's tough. It's got to be really tough to carry that with you. And then when you get to really know those guys, if you know them,
Yeah.
and you know, you want to get to the point where you go, fucking McCarty, you ashed all over the floor. You want to be able to yell it. I can yell at Darren because I know Darren as a person who's got troubles
Right.
and a wife and kids and fucking dogs.
Yeah.
You know, and I know his dogs' names, and like, you know him at that level. They're people now.
Yeah,
They're
just
they're not a jersey. They're not a
Exactly.
superhero anymore.
Exactly.
And so yeah, it's a tough go, man. It's crazy, but it just bothered me a lot seeing those guys, and you know, the Russian guy at the, you know, Bob comes in to get a sandwich or whatever, and the guy's like,
guys feed him
do,
shots,
do
yeah,
a
yeah.
shot with the Russian. And it's like, it's tradition to do 20 shots, whatever it is, and
That's just tough, though, man.
it's like how do you guys do this to him?
You know, though, man, this is literally, you want to talk about Darren, man? The first time I ever met Darren had years ago before this show. I was at a Tigers game, standing room only. I was like, oh, that's fucking Darren McCarty over there. And I knew he had issues, but I was like, fucking Darren McCarty, I want to buy him a beer. And I bought him a
Right.
freaking beer. And, you know, other people.
You idiot.
He already had a beer in his hand, man. And so I bought him one, too. And I wanted
Yeah.
to say that I bought Darren McCarty a beer. And so it's when you say this, the Irish guy, or
Exactly.
the Russian dude, I get that. But it's just,
Yeah.
it's so hard when you don't know them like that, because they're not a person. They're Darren McCarty, and I want to buy him a fucking beer because I think, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And you also don't know. Like,
And
I mean,
I don't know
you
how
know,
bad
you
it-
hear, you hear the rumors,
Right. I don't know that he's
but you
really.
don't know, and you don't know, like, exactly. Like, you don't know what's exaggerated. You don't know the reality of the situation. You don't
Yeah.
know where he's at now.
And
And
he's
I
allowed to
get
have a
that.
beer or two. I don't know, you know.
Yeah, but you know, I think Probie went to 3 centers in 3 years. Like,
Yeah.
his rookie year.
Yeah, for the first few
Ended-
years, he was spending his summers in rehab. Yeah.
Right, and of course he's you know, starts banging one of the counselors there. It's like, of course he did. Brings her home to mom. I mean, it's just like, what is the matter with the counselors here?
Yeah, it's
Well, they're
wild.
banging Bob Probert
When he's banging his little lady that's hosting him when he's a young in the
Yeah.
juniors or something too.
Yeah.
Like, what a terrible situation to put yourself in. But then he references like, well, all my other teammates were doing the same thing.
That's shockingly common.
Yeah.
Shockingly.
Well, Keith gave. We know Keith a little bit, and he, you know, obviously been a sports writer here in town, Free
Yeah.
Press forever, and great writer.
Yeah.
I think Bob calls him that little asshole.
Yeah.
Do you think Keith gave in his reporting on Bob Probert and, you know, other guy Peter Klima and Koser
Yeah.
was fair at the time? Because he was really harsh on them and their drinking and, you know, partying and.
Well, Keith talked to us about that, and I think Keith said that he wasn't always fair in his opinion now.
Yeah.
In that there was a story once where someone saw Bob at a bar, and he was drinking what could have been a water.
Yeah.
Like something clear, and reported it to the Detroit Free Press. I was like, well, this is a story, and he had written a story about that. Like, obviously, that's not fair. Like, you don't even know if he's drinking.
Right.
He could just be at the bar with his teammates. And
Yeah.
there were stories like that. And I think Keith now has gained perspective about it all. And he opens up about that a little bit in the doc.
And I give him credit for that.
Yeah, me too. It's
I
not
thought
an
that
easy
was
thing to
very,
own that.
I
It's
thought
big
that
of
was
him.
very cool.
Yeah, for sure.
him. Basically in a nutshell, we won't say exactly what he said, but he's,
Right,
it could have been any of us.
Could have been, yeah, right.
You know what I mean? Like, he just got caught.
Yeah, exactly. Now to have the perspective, like, this was just a guy, and Bob was a guy like any of us, and everyone goes through their issues, and it's not easy to have it be like front page news every time something like that's happening, and sometimes when it's like not even newsworthy at all.
Yeah, and you know what? I'll ask, but you probably can't even answer this. But the Edmonton series,
Right.
in the playoffs, I believe, what was that? The next, you win that round, Nexus Cup. Was that where they were that year?
Conference final.
The conference final, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And you're talking about a Messier, Gretzky, like
Gretzky.
the Oilers,
Best team ever.
best team
Probably.
ever. Right.
Yeah.
And the Red Wing players, a lot of them missed curfew one night
Right.
before. Was
Night
it
before the conference final.
start or like game 5 or something?
It was before the game that got Detroit eliminated.
Okay, so it was 3-1.
I think it was game 5.
Okay, so it was
Because I
game
think
5.
Detroit only won one game in the
Yeah,
series.
so it was Edmonton's up games
3 to 1. Yeah.
And a bunch of the guys, 6-7 players, go out.
Yeah.
And time went on. They're late to curfew.
Right.
Campbell shows up. Says, guys, get your ass back, and they go back.
Exactly.
Keith Gave immediately goes to Jacques Demers. Do I have that chronology
What
right?
happened was Mitch Albom was eating breakfast and had overheard players talk about it. And then so Keith and Mitch went to Jacques and asked him about it.
Of course.
And Jacques was...
They didn't go to ask him about it. They went to fucking tattle. They knew what they were doing, right?
Oh, well, Mitch and Keith?
yeah.
Well, they're reporters.
Right.
So, their job is to, I think reporting on that specific incident is probably fair, right? To ask about it at least.
I know. I can see it both ways.
They got blown out, right?
Yeah.
This was the conference final of a playoff series, and players went out drinking the night before. They asked the coach, and in fairness to Keith and Mitch, Jacques opened up about it. He just told them.
Yeah.
So at that point, it became a pretty big story.
And he called Probert a cancer at one point.
Right.
And it was tough to watch that part. It's cool, but I felt like, and the city, kind of like Tony Romo when the guys that Witten went out before a playoff game, went out of town on a cruise or something, and came back and got their asses kicked, and it was like that is why we lost.
Yeah.
And Probert had a dynamite series. Was probably the best guy on the ice for that series.
Right.
And still, Probert was drinking the night before. It's his fault. Koster's fault. Klima's fault. He took a lot of shit, and then to get blasted by your coach and teammates, that I get it. Keith Gave and Mitch Albom have a job to do.
Yeah.
And that's fair.
Right.
But it seemed unfair the way Probert was treated, and it's probably years of...
I agree.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think you don't trash your teammates.
Ever.
And if you're the coach, you don't trash your players publicly.
Yeah.
Ever. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
That standard. I think from his perspective,
Was it Decorum, the defenseman that really... Decorum?
There was a few.
It was like he should be banned from the league and never...
Yeah. There's a couple players that spoke out. That was more after the cocaine incident that said,
Okay.
because leading up, there's so much material.
Sorry, I know. I
So
feel
it's
like
when you
scenes.
no, it's okay. There's so much material to go through when you tackle someone's life, that you can't put it all in. But basically, what had been happening before the cocaine incident was Probert was starting
He
to
had a rap
show.
sheet.
I think he was starting to show up late for practice. I think he was feeling kind of. He wasn't at his highest point. You know what I mean? In terms of his own
And is he
morale.
sober-ish?
No.
Okay.
So this is leading up to that, right? And then finally, so the team's already kind of giving him chances. He's showing up late for practice. He's on a pretty consistent basis. I think at one point they sent him down to the farm. He came back up, and so players are already starting to feel frustrated with him. And then the border incident happens.
Yeah.
And so
International
they let it fly when certain players, when they're asking them about it in the media, they trash him publicly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think obviously in hindsight, it's like you don't do that
Yeah.
about teammates.
I thought it was so cool, Bob, too, saying like,
It was cool that Iserman stuck up for him.
So it's like, yes, I would expect that from the captain. And Iserman's a fucking baby face.
I know,
He's
it's
just
amazing.
a kid, and it's
Like, well, he
he's
handles
so
himself as a young guy.
Dude,
it's amazing.
Unreal. And he's sitting there, and he's just thoughtful, and
I know.
he cares about him.
I know,
This
and he's
is
like
my
24.
guy.
It doesn't make him to have that kind of
It doesn't.
class.
Yeah.
And that perspective, and to carry yourself that way. I mean, it's no question. It's no wonder he's considered one of the great like leaders of the sport.
Yeah, because it'd be very easy. You know, if a guy is willing to pop off on a microphone and go, I think he should be banned from the league and never let, he's a pariah, he should never be let back in. That guy does not hold that opinion alone. And those locker rooms are so tight. Those guys are around each other all the time. You know what's being said in the locker room. Iserman would have known what's being said in the locker room. And for him to go out, maybe even not on an island at that point, his coaches trashed this guy. His teammates have trashed this guy, acting like he shouldn't even be in the league anymore. And here's this kid with a fucking C on his sweater just going, hey, man, I got sympathy for him. It might be out of his hands at this point. I love him, And it's just like, wow, that's why you're wearing the C on the sweater.
And he had visited him in prison.
It's crazy. And the other thing that I didn't know at all was that last bust. I mean, Bob was facing some serious shit, and it sounded like he maybe didn't, like they were trying to hint, wink, wink, like help him out a little bit.
I mean, that's Colin Campbell's theory that it was a cry for help, that he was in a desperate situation, and that he was behaving in such a reckless fashion that he was just he was waiting for the opportunity to kind of get caught for something.
Yeah, because I probably shouldn't say any more. We've talked a lot about the details of the movie, and I don't want to blow. 'Cause people should see it. It's amazing. Thanks, obviously
man,
it really is. And toughguymovie.com. If you're a hockey fan, if you're a Wings fan, if you're not a hockey fan, if you're not a Wings fan, you'll love this movie. It's a lot of fun. Toughguymovie.com. Exclusively at the Imagine Michigan locations: Birch Run, Canton, Heartland, Macomb, Novi, the Palladium, Rochester Hills. Is the Palladium Rochester? No, it's two separate. Royal Oak and Saline. And you'll be at the Royal Oak one doing a Q&A Friday night.
Yeah.
For one showing, are you guys doing the Q&A?
So they're doing a Q&A tonight. So both the screening tonight and tomorrow are a part of the Detroit Free Press Film Festival. That's going on right now.
Yep.
And we'll be doing Q&As tonight and Friday night.
Lastly, because we could get into the oxys and all that.
There's a lot to talk about in the doc.
Some of the heartbreaking home video that Danny let you put in there, which is shocking.
Right.
Christmas mornings, and
Yeah.
Brave of her and the kids and the family to let out there to see really full scale what it's like.
Right.
Bringing Danny to the spot where he died on Lake. What lake was it?
Lake St. Clair.
Lake St. Clair.
Yeah.
Did you feel that was important to get her on location to shoot? Because you could have done that in the living room and talked about the day.
Yeah, that was something, it's just been such a long time. It's like 8 or 9 years. And I think that we thought it was important for her to kind of go back.
Was she hesitant
and
at all?
revisit. She was up for it.
Yeah.
So I sort of floated the idea and said,
is that one of those where you come in a little like, oh boy, this is going to go either
for sure
okay or this is really going to suck for me?
Well, I try not to push people to do things they don't want to do. As like a filmmaker, like that's important. Like if I ask somebody a question and they just don't want to answer it, I don't grill them. Yeah.
It's not about you.
No, it's not about me. And
you're documenting
not,
there.
And I think you need to have an ethical code. Like you need, so same kind of mentality. I asked her if it was something that she'd be comfortable doing, if she'd like to do, and if she did, I said, if you don't want to do it, we don't have to do it.
Yeah.
And she was up for doing it. But I mean, that just speaks to Danny. I mean, you've mentioned it before, and it's really tough to explain, like, unless you've met her, but she's just such an incredible, she really is an incredible person.
There are, we've had hundreds of guests in the studio, celebrities, athletes, rock stars, and movie stars. And Danny's just, she was, like, when people say, like, oh, who was your favorite person? I love Motley Crue growing up. And Nikki Sixx was amazing. Tommy Lee coming in. And there's a handful of guests that came in over the years that I just went, yes, all day, every day. And
Yeah.
Danny Probert was one of them.
Oh, she's amazing.
Top 5 probably of my favorite guests over the years that came in and just was so, I don't know what it was, man. It's hard to explain, but it was just
and especially when
really
you meet,
cool.
when you meet her kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you get the chance, they're
Love
amazing
to.
too.
Yeah, I've never met them.
Yeah.
So what is next for the movie in your eyes? You've got a limited release now.
Yeah.
It's been out a while in Canada. You guys had a premiere a while ago.
Yeah,
correct?
I think relatively,
Yeah.
a relative while ago.
I mean, yeah, but not
Yeah.
yesterday.
No, for sure.
Do you want? Obviously, you'd love a wide release. Is that possible? Is it likely?
Yeah, so it's at this point we have a distributor on board, and
great.
they're shopping around, seeing where we can take it.
Yeah.
But I think it's amazing. Like, it's I mean, you guys are well aware of this because you're here in Detroit. And
Yeah.
you know about this world, but like for people outside of the hockey world, it's tough to explain to them, like, okay, like this hockey player that played like early 90s as a fighter still has like this massive community of fans that
Yeah.
will support a movie like this.
Yeah.
So it's exciting because it is kind of it's a pretty niche topic, but
Yeah.
he still has this amazing, really big fan base, and like in a city like here in Detroit, and he's still like a legend. We're
for
still
sure.
selling out screenings, and
Yeah.
it's just amazing.
It's got to
how
be tough. I mean, is that even something that goes through your mind when you decide, okay, this is my next project? Because you do a lot of other types of stuff, and I can
Right.
ask you briefly about that.
Sure.
Doing something like this, it has to cross your mind, like, okay, here's a guy that hasn't played in the league in a while. I don't want to do a end of season highlight reel film.
Right.
It's a story about it's so much bigger than hockey, but hockey is so critical to that story.
Yeah.
And so, how am I going to sell this to someone outside of Detroit? How am I going to sell this to, mothers and someone who doesn't follow hockey? But they will like it. But it's hard to
Right.
get that across, I would think, or it's at least a concern.
I wasn't really that concerned. I mean,
It's good. It's good.
the book had sold really well. He still gets, I mean, a few years ago when the stuff about CTE came out that he's diagnosed with CTE, that still got a lot of attention. He's just a player
Does
that's
he have
still,
CTE?
Yeah, he's diagnosed postmortem.
Okay, that's
Because
the only
he
way to
donated
diagnose.
his brain to science.
Okay.
And he did have it.
Yeah, no shot
And that
there.
was a pretty big news story. And so I always believed that that his story was compelling enough, and that he was a compelling enough character that
Right.
that we'd find an audience.
Yeah.
And I think it does kind of start with that. Like, it starts with the story and like the vision of like, I think this would be a really great documentary that people are going to want to watch. And then
Yeah.
you get excited about that, and you just kind of think, well, like, if I really want to see this documentary, I think there'll be enough people that want to see
Yeah.
it. And you just kind of hope that that's the case. And that's, I mean, in the past it hasn't always been, but
I stood outside.
but I'm really glad with this story it is.
Well, I stood outside this morning just kind of thinking to myself, I'm just like, okay, Geordie's coming in later. And I was trying to think about this type of question, like worried about that. And I was like, you know what? If the story's told right, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Like, I hate Cleveland. Fuck Cleveland. I don't like anything about Cleveland. But ESPN Films does a 30-30 doc on it, and it's brilliant. And it's like, I'm rooting for Cleveland in that moment.
I know.
To win a championship for the first time in 54 years or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I despise everything about Cleveland. and I'm like, I watched every second of it and loved it. So I was like,
I love 30 for 30.
they're great, aren't they?
They're amazing,
I mean,
yeah.
they're just great stories. They're
Yeah.
storytellers, mixed with the sport. It's awesome. The Bad Boys one is amazing.
Yeah, there is something about that. Like when you're rewatching old games that you like remember.
Yeah.
But it's been a while, and then you have the players intermixed, kind of providing context.
Yeah.
And not just like sports context, but like human context.
Yeah.
Like where you're at mentally. There's something so magical about it.
There is, and you probably weren't around for any of this, but when we were coming up and the Wings were finally getting,
Yeah.
and struggling, and then March 26th, McCarty beats the shit out of Lemieux, and the city just, and then he scores the game-winning goal in
Yeah.
overtime, and it's put that team at a different level that we can compete with these guys to beat them in the finals, go win a cup. I mean, this town at the time, you would have been a toddler probably, but there were Red Wing flags on every car. Am I kidding?
Oh no, dude! You know the car when the car flags got kind of popular for a bit. I don't know if they've kind of gone away a little, but there was a time when he's describing. I remember
it was insane around here.
I remember going from a 45-minute drive from where I lived to Detroit, and me and my brother counted the flags. And I think we counted like 300, 400 flags. I'm talking from a 45-minute drive into the city to go watch a Wings game on the TV, which was sold out at Joe Louis, by the way.
Well, I had a similar experience. Well, I'm from Calgary. And I remember when the Flames made their 04 run, Calgary was like that.
Really?
Because they were almost, I mean, they don't have the same history as Detroit does in terms of hockey, but they hadn't been a good team they hadn't been a good team since like 89. It was looking like they were going to leave the city, and I think they were in last place the year before, and they went deep, and like no one expected them to. It was the same kind of thing, just like flags everywhere, and
it so dominated the landscape around here. It's even hard to describe. You know, when 9/11 happened,
right?
You know, it took over. Like the whole country went, hold it,
right,
and stopped, and they were everybody was on the same page. Like politics went out the window. Races went out the window. Like that shit was put into perspective quick.
Right.
And I don't, not to compare the Wings winning a cup with 9/11, but it was almost that feeling like the whole area,
the whole city's together,
was together. It was all of Metro Detroit. It was,
that's amazing.
It was incredible. And the human interest stories and the cool thing was too, the players were accessible. The players would call into our morning show. They were 25-year-old kids, Draper and Osgood and McCarty. They would call from the West Coast at 3 in the morning and 6 a.m. our time. Put me on the air, man. Like that doesn't happen in a football locker room during a playoff run.
No, that's true.
They were very into the city, and they got it, and it just made everything feel. It was weird. It was a weird, amazing feeling.
That's awesome.
Yeah, streaming services makes things really interesting for guys like you nowadays.
Yeah.
Is that a potential thing? You know, you end up on a Hulu and Netflix.
Yeah, they're the distributors talking to those companies. They're trying to make something happen. So fingers crossed for sure.
Dude, that'd be awesome.
It'd be great.
Lastly, I wanted to ask you, because you've done a lot of stuff and TV, producer, director, documentary films. I was just looking. I hate looking at people's bios, but you know what? Fuck it, whatever.
Sure.
So you in 2017, so just a couple of years ago, you co-produced Charles Manson Final Words.
Right. Yeah.
I kind of love what Reels has been doing. I find myself landing on the Reels channel
really?
more and more. Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah,
they've got some really cool stuff, you know, that they do, and kind of I don't know how to describe it, like entertainment stuff and like
entertainment, true crime they do.
True crime, right? They dig into an Elvis story or Michael Jackson, R. Kelly. You know, they'll kind of dig into the dirt of some of these, like you think you know the story.
Exactly.
And Charles Manson, and it contained the very last ever recorded interview with Manson.
Right. Yeah.
And what was that like? And how did you get it? Like,
it
did
was
you
a
know?
surreal experience. So I didn't set up the interview. So basically, what had happened was I was working on a different Reels show where that was basically like the true
shocking truth.
Shocking truth. So it was like the true stories behind like popular movies. So it's basically as you described it, like that's what very much what the channel does. And I was like talking to a writer in New York who said he was working on a book with Charles Manson, and it was about how Manson was innocent. And so I was like, okay, like that's kind of weird. But we kind of like dug into it. And by the way, the documentary doesn't make that argument, but there was definitely what we found, like from researching it, was the commonly held narrative is definitely flawed. Basically, the prosecutor wrote Helter Skelter, and there's just a lot of problems with the narrative. So the original concept for the documentary was just like to re-look into things and to talk to people that were actually there. And
do you mean like the guy? He's known as a serial killer, but he's never actually murdered anyone.
Well, I think that's fairly well known, but it's like even there's a lot of crazy things about that case. I mean, we could talk for so long, but
I know, yeah.
But another thing is like, I mean, we talked to a lot of people that lived on that ranch, and obviously ended up speaking with Charles Manson as well. I didn't, but the director did. And one thing would be like they're all like Charles Manson didn't even like the Beatles.
Really?
Yeah, like he didn't think the Beatles were talking to him.
Yeah, but he's a Beach Boy guy.
That's crazy. Like, and you know, another thing that's like wild is they say so he's convicted for conspiracy to murder, and I'm not saying that didn't happen, but from a legal perspective, there was essentially no evidence that traced him to doing that, other than Linda Kasabian, who's like the star witness. She claimed that she overheard a conversation. But it was different from her initial testimony. So and just like the whole court case was very, very odd.
Well,
There's
he
a lot.
was such a weird guy, and the chicks coming dancing and
is.
singing into the courtroom and on this cult-like thing, and him with the swastika carved into his forehead, and the crazy ass shit he said.
Well, he just lived such a like. I think one thing that's like when you're trying to like contextualize him as a person,
yeah,
you kind of have to understand that he literally spent his entire life in prison.
right.
From the time he was literally like 14 to the time he died, like in his 80s, he was free for like a year and a half when the murders took place. Mm-hmm. So his whole perspective and philosophy on life revolved around prison and what
so
the
during that
ethical code of in prison is.
Yeah.
He lived by like prison
Rules.
standards, prison rules. Yeah, that was his philosophy.
So it was, but he got tight with like Brian Wilson, right?
Right.
And so was that during that year and a half that he's out?
Right. He wanted to be a musician.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was ended up writing.
That's
a song for the
crazy. I mean,
Beach
he was
Boys
like
and-
hanging out with the Beach Boys and stuff, and then
right. Just
Wow.
kind of, just like it was like if you, it's kind of a weird thing where he got out of prison and he's kind of like a lot of guys are off of Vietnam, and culturally it's like a cool thing to kind of be like
hippie and
yeah, to be kind of like a hippie transient kind of guy. And that's exactly, and that's who he is. So he like just kind of falls into the right time and place in order
Right.
to be able to influence people.
Do you think he was a psychotic killer like that? Because I know when we during the morning show, like John Wayne Gacy was in
Yeah.
prison, right?
Yeah.
Clown, molesting kids, murder under the, there was a guy. His name was Jason, who started writing to Gacy in prison.
Right.
I don't know if you know this story at all, but
Yeah.
and so he starts writing, and Gacy starts writing back, and that was his goal. He wanted to write a killer and see if he could make a connection.
Yeah.
And it's a terrible ending. Jason ended up committing suicide a few years after the book came out, but he's got all these recordings, and he would
Yeah.
go and meet Manson, and you see what a psychotic fuck John Wayne Gacy is.
Yeah.
Sick, He can say he's innocent all he wants. He's been framed, but then he can't help but say the next thing, and it's just like, oh, you're batshit, dude.
Yeah.
And so that's why I was like, Manson doesn't strike me as that. I mean, a lot of it looks like a,
Well,
I don't know.
he seemed to be what you'd want him to be. Like, I mean, when you see him on like 60 Minutes and some of those like iconic interviews that he did, he was you'd look at him
Playing
and
the
you'd be
part?
like, you'd look like, oh, crazed serial killer.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's almost like, but then with a lot of the phone interviews we did, he was kind of more like an older hippie kind of guy. Like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, man. Like it was the 60s, man. I just wanted to like suck on girls' titties. Like he'd just say, like, he'd be like he would just talk like some old like hippie stoner kind of guy.
You kind of get the feeling though that
And
he's
then-
playing a part when
Always.
the camera's on him and he's going,
I
I'm
think
gonna, blah, 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 blah.
The weird thing about the doc was because initially we were sort of exploring the possibility that maybe he was falsely imprisoned. And I mean, from a legal perspective, like I don't want to say like I'm making the argument that he's innocent, but you could definitely make the argument that from a legal perspective they didn't have enough to imprison him. And like, there's just so much there. But
Do you think if he's just a dude who doesn't have a swastika carved into his head, doesn't say wild ass crazy shit on 60 Minutes, can you find one of his interviews something?
Well, that's the thing is like he didn't
Manson interview crazy.
he didn't
whatever.
seem to care if people thought he was guilty.
But
in fact, I think
if
he
the public,
might have.
the public saw that though and went, "Oh, this guy's insane as shit." Yeah, lock him away, never let him out because he never got on paroled.
But he didn't dislike like. Well, I don't know. Like I don't want to speak for Charles Manson, but from the people that we talked to, he didn't
Mind jail?
necessarily want to be out of prison.
Yeah.
It's all he knew, right?
Yeah, no, that's fair. It just always seemed to me like, okay, he's like Mike Tyson. I'm gonna eat his children, like said crazy ass shit on TV. He wasn't
Yeah.
really gonna eat someone's children, but and Manson would kind of do that too and fly off and give you the look, and it was like an actor almost in a weird way. And I wondered if
I think that's a thoughtful, like, I think there's some truth there.
truth there.
Yeah.
I
You
kind of
got
don't
one
know
of
what year you want here. I mean, it looks like this looks kind of newer to me, but here's.
Oh, yeah.
Well, see if
So-
there's some things with that he said I can't remember off the top of my head. So I
He
guess
he does speak in riddles.
he does.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if he was just like,
tough to
if
get,
he
like,
looked
a
like
straight-
you and was accused of having a cult and they killed these people and cut a baby out of what's her name's stomach and killed
Sharon
her-
Tate.
Sharon Tate,
Right.
Helter Skelter. If that had happened, and it was just like a normal guy without the swastika, not saying crazy shit on the news, and he was just like on trial going, I never put a knife to anybody.
Right.
Like, would the public thought on him have been different? Like, well, in truth,
Yeah.
he never killed anyone. I wonder how much of what he did on camera played into him spending the rest of his life in prison.
Yeah.
I don't know. All right,
Go
go
ahead
ahead.
and start talking here, I guess.
No,
gas
that's just.
chamber because I hadn't done anything wrong.
You scared to die?
Sometimes I feel I'm scared to live. Living is what scares me.
Speaking of
Dying
riddles.
is easy. How long have I been in jail? 34 years? 34 years, so
Out of 47, you've been here 34.
I've been in jail. Prison.
Yeah, if there's certain clips, don't even worry about it. It's okay. We gotta get
Yeah.
Geordie out of here anyway. So
Right, but I mean, even in, like, if you go through all these interviews, you kind of see a different kind of person in a
Yeah.
lot of them, right?
for
So when
sure.
you're talking about him kind of putting something on,
yeah,
I think that there is definitely some of that.
because I think people would put him in the same. Just thinking about it would put him in this, John Wayne Gacy, and it's like when you hear John Wayne Gacy talk on a microphone when he thinks he's talking to some guy as a pen pal.
Right.
The like, oh yeah, that's the murderer there.
Right.
You hear that come. You can't help it.
Right.
And Charles Manson, I don't hear that with him. I don't know. Not to say he's
Yeah,
innocent
you
of
should check
anything,
out the
but-
doc because it's kind of tough to go into the whole thing. There's like,
Yeah.
it just sort of investigates, like, not that he wasn't necessarily responsible, but just that there could have been much more pragmatic motives,
Mm.
and that he was a motive-driven person, and maybe not just like a crazed serial killer as you described. Like,
Right.
Yeah.
Geordie Day, thank you so much for coming in.
Cool, thanks for
It's a lot
having
of
me.
fun, man. You
Yeah,
were
it was
awesome.
great.
I'll get to him. Toughguymovie.com. Go there. There's the website. You can find out wherever it's playing, get tickets. And again, Tough Guy, the Bob Probert story. It opens tonight and exclusively at Imagine Michigan locations. So again, it's Birch Run, Canton, Heartland, Macomb, Novi, Palladium, Rochester Hills, Royal Oak, and Saline. Tickets on sale now. I hope you have great success with it, man.
Thank
And
you.
Come back
Thank you for
anytime.
having
It's
me.
been
Yeah,
a blast
absolutely.
to
It was
have you.
great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah. Okay. What do I have? 2 reads lefty.
Yeah.
All right. Does your money work as hard as you do? You will spend upwards of 45 years working to support your lifestyle, provide for your family, and set aside money for retirement. Do you know if you'll be able to retire on your terms? How could you know if you don't have a plan? Let Mark Leibovitz at LPL Financial help to make sure your money is working as hard as you are. Call Mark today, 248-626-2000. And then securities advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA SIPC. I'll hold the last one, E. We'll get to that next time.
Sure.
Good luck with it, bro. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thanks for hanging with us. Have a great weekend, and we'll be back next week. We'll see you then.
You've been listening to the Detroit Cast with your hosts, Mike and Jay. From all of us at Radio for One Studios, thank you for listening. And as always, thank you, Detroit.
Listen to